Alright, welcome back to Shooting It Straight and to probably the final episode in the series all about Glocks. Now, do Glocks have a single action trigger or are they double action? And what does the term safe action, what does that mean? Well, for 40 years now, those questions have been asked, and they still are. The term safe action has confused a lot of people, even some gunsmiths and armorers, and apparently still do. Now, admittedly, this can be a little confusing, especially for the newer members of the gun community. But in reality, it's pretty simple. So let's clear up some of this confusion once and for all. Now, I've heard from many folks, even so-called experts, refer to Glocks as a single action trigger pistol. I've also heard folks argue that it's a double action trigger system. And still again, many of the experts claim that Glocks are, well, they're neither single action nor double action, but instead the trigger is somewhere in between the two, some sort of hybrid or something. And I've also heard others say that they are neither single nor double action, they are safe action triggers. Well, here's where I'm going to put an end to all of this bullshit once and for all. And what I'm about to tell you comes directly from Glock. Okay? Listen, safe action is a term. It is not a function. It is not a mode. And it has nothing to do with whether it's a single action trigger mode or a double action trigger function. It is a term used by Glock to describe the three safety features of the pistol, which are all engaged and disengaged through trigger movement. Now, Springfield Armory XD pistols have the exact same safety features that work in the same way, but they use the term USA trigger system, Ultra Safety Assurance trigger system. These are simply terms used to describe a safety system. The safe action system involves three independently operating mechanical safeties that sequentially disengage while pulling the trigger and then automatically re-engage while releasing the trigger. Okay? That's what safe action means. So now that I have clarified that, let me clarify the other part of the mass confusion. Glock pistols are double action trigger mode pistols. Okay? Double action. They're not single action. They're not somewhere in between action, and they're not neither one. They are and always have been double action because pulling the trigger on a Glock performs two, as in double, two actions. Alright? Number one, it completes the cocking process of the firing pin. And then, number two, it causes the sear on the back of the cruciform here, that's your sear. It causes the sear to release that firing pin. So that's two actions, double action, cocking and releasing, much like pulling the trigger on an uncocked revolver. It's the same thing. A single action type trigger has only one job, a single job, and that is to release the hammer. Now the XD uses a single action trigger mode because all it does is release the striker lug by dropping the sear. Alright? The striker has been fully cocked by the slide action. On a Glock, it's only partially cocked. Your pull of the trigger completes that cocking process. On the XDs, it's already cocked. Alright? Think of a Colt 1911. Now, cock the hammer fully back. Okay? Now pull the trigger. Pulling the trigger does one thing. It causes the sear to release the hammer, which is only one action, releasing the hammer. So the trigger there is a single action trigger. Anytime the trigger must cock a hammer or striker, whether fully or partially, and then release the hammer or striker, then that trigger is a double action trigger, because it is performing two functions or two actions. Alright? So, safe action refers to the three safety mechanisms of the Glock double action pistol. The trigger safety, this safety leaf right in here, the split trigger. Alright, that's the trigger safety. 2, the firing pin safety, and you know what that is, and you know what it does. It blocks the firing pin channel, prevents the firing pin from coming through the breech face and striking the primer. Alright, that has to be depressed so that it can clear the channel, so that the firing pin can clear the channel, right? So that's 1, 2, firing pin safety, and 3, the drop safety. Now the drop safety is back here in the trigger mechanism housing. And I'm not going to take this out, because I've taken this out so many times and taken the pins in and out so many times, I don't want to do it anymore and make those holes loosen up on this frame here. So I'm going to keep it in there. But there's a window in here in this plastic part, or the polymer housing, that the wing of that cruciform rests. It's a 2-step shelf. The upper shelf is a safety shelf or safety ledge. Alright? That's what the drop safety is. So 1, 2, 3. Alright, and remember, all 3 of those are engaged and disengaged simply by pulling and releasing the trigger sequentially. They all happen in sequential order. Alright, now let's take a look at how each safety works and how to function test each of them. Alright, the trigger test. This leaf, the back of the trigger back here, this leaf has to be sticking out and resting against the frame right here to prevent the trigger from coming back. You can grab it on both sides and pull that trigger back, or try to. If the trigger comes back without you depressing that safety leaf right there, then that safety leaf is not doing its job. What you'll have to do is just get a new trigger bar altogether, because it's not meant to be disassembled. It all comes in one unit. So you'll have to just get a new trigger bar, which is not expensive and it's simple. Alright? Now that leaf, the tension there is from a polymer leaf, a polymer leaf spring shaped like that, and that's pretty much what it does. And what has happened is that polymer has lost its resiliency. Alright, so if it fails that test, you need to get a new trigger bar, right? Now the firing safety pin, or the firing pin safety. Simple way to do that, to check that. Alright, is to turn it this way so that you can see the breech face and see the firing pin hole right here. Now if you push the lug of the firing pin forward, the firing pin safety should block it. So the nose of that firing pin should not protrude from that breech face. and it won't come through. Now, if you depress that safety and do the same thing, push it back, you'll see it come through. See how it moves through there? Now it won't. Now it will, because it's working. Alright, that's how you test that. So when you pull the trigger, when you're pulling the trigger, this vertical extension right here on your trigger bar rolls right under that firing pin safety and depresses it, pushes it up, thereby clearing the passage for your firing pin right through here. That's how that works. And it's mainly, the firing pin safety is mainly designed to avoid accidental firing should extreme forces cause a separation of the slide and the frame. Alright. Now during the cycling process, when you're shooting, the firing pin safety automatically re-engages by means of the firing pin safety spring. That firing pin safety has a spring in there, and it pushes it right back out and re-engages that firing pin safety. Now, should that firing pin safety test fail, you should replace the firing pin safety and the spring with it. Okay, just don't take a chance, just replace the whole thing as a unit. And possibly the firing pin itself, depending on its condition. Take it out and inspect it and check its condition. Make sure there are no chips in it or large dings or something like that. Alright, now the drop safety. Now this safety involves the cruciform, alright, the cruciform or the cross here, alright, and the trigger mechanism housing. Now that one wing, there's one wing of this cruciform resting on the top safety ledge of the trigger housing here. It's designed to prevent the trigger bar cruciform sear from releasing the firing pin. That sear right back here, this sear right here, interfaces with the face of your firing pin lug right here. Alright, so it's designed to prevent the trigger bar cruciform sear from releasing the firing pin unless the trigger is pulled. Now when pulling the trigger to the rear, the cruciform wing begins to leave that upper safety ledge where the connector causes it to drop down and off of that safety ledge, which when it does that, when it drops down, it's going to separate the sear from the firing pin lug, which allows the firing pin to go fully forward and the pistol to fire. Now during the cycling process, the connector here the connector is pushed inward by ramp, this ramp right here. That's what that ramp is for. When the slide cycles, it pushes that connector inward. Alright? It pushes it in, releasing the trigger bar tail. Alright? The trigger bar is then immediately lifted with the help of the trigger spring, allowing the firing pin lug to re-engage with the face of that sear back here on the cruciform, where the firing pin lug pushes the trigger bar forward, the whole trigger bar forward, alright, which drives the cruciform wing back onto that top safety ledge while resetting the trigger and partially cocking the firing pin all at the same time. Now here's how to here's how to test that drop safety right here. Alright. push your trigger bar forward. Make sure it's forward. Make sure your trigger is fully forward and the safety leaf is engaged here. Okay? Take something like this and push down on it. Push down on the top of that cruciform. If it doesn't fall off of that top shelf, that top safety ledge, then it's good. If it does, well, then you need to replace your trigger bar and or your trigger mechanism housing. So maybe that somehow that safety shelf in there, that drop safety cutout area has been deformed in some way. Don't know. So when you pull the trigger, you'll see that cruciform drop down. Okay? There, see that? See how it drops down? When it drops down like that, it's going to release that firing pin lug. It's going to lose contact and the firing pin is going to go forward. Then your slide cycles, this will push your connector inward, letting the tail of your trigger bar pop back up where it should be. Now, that lug continues to push that cruciform by the sear, continues to push it forward, which is going to reset your connector and trigger bar tail and push your trigger fully forward so that safety leaf can engage. Okay, now watch. You'll hear it click. When you hear it click, that's your reset. Hear that? That's your reset. But it continues to go forward. Now your trigger is reset. See how that does? It resets your trigger and it resets your connector and your trigger bar tail. And now you're right back on that safety shelf until you pull the trigger again. Alright, if these three safeties are working properly, the pistol cannot fire unless the trigger is pulled fully rearward. Okay? Alright, well, fellas, this wraps things up here. I hope I was able to answer some questions and give you some useful and valuable information, since, you know, that's always my goal. So thanks for watching. I'm Antonius, and I'll be shooting it straight at you once again very soon. Ciao.